President Joe Biden has his sights set on voting legislation, specifically the proposed John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. Both are stalled and Republicans reject the legislation. But now, in a highly controversial move, the president backs changing the Senate filibuster rules in order to push his agenda through. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. Facing intense political pressure tonight to act and not just talk, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris flew to Georgia today to support passage of voting rights legislation. Opponents, however, don't want any part of it, calling it essentially a power grab.
Heading to Marine One this morning ahead of his planned voting rights speech in Atlanta, President Joe Biden is asked what he risks politically when he knows the state of the Senate.
I risk not saying what I believe. That's what I risk. This is one of those defining moments. It really is. People are going to be judged. Where were they before and where were they after the vote?
But even some voting rights advocates are not exactly thrilled with the president's approach.
But at this point, we don't need another speech. We don't need him to come to Georgia and use us as a prop. What we need is work.
Some Democrats claim Republicans are trying to disenfranchise black voters. But Florida Senator Marco Rubio recently tweeted, "In America, it's never been easier to vote than it is today." And Senate Republicans warned in a tweet, Democrats want to silence millions of Americans by eliminating the filibuster.
Current Senate rules require 60 votes to advance most legislation, including voting rights, to make sure big changes have broad support. But not all Democrats support changing the filibuster rules.
Former Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, who is now leading the Election Transparency Initiative, says it's all about power.
And unfortunately, his Democrat team, not all of it, but large chunks of it, want a Washington election takeover so they can control this all from Washington, which has never happened in American history.
And Ken Cuccinelli says President Biden is driving wedges rather than working across the aisle.
This is a partisan political takeover of elections that the president is pushing. And he does it under historic and great sounding phrases like voting rights. It is not voting rights to eliminate voter ID. You don't improve voting rights, you water them down.
The Democrats' voting legislation would usher in the biggest overhaul of U.S. elections in a generation and create national election standards. Republicans resolutely reject having that happen. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.